and Lee Sin just straight away, boom, first pickup for V5.
Yeah, no surprise on that one. This has been the pick that V5 have banned every single game they've played thus far. That's 5 games. Going to take that one this time, but we've mostly seen WE play on blue side, actually. They played 4 of their 5 games on blue side. That's all their wins. Their one loss was when they were put onto red side that time. So going to instantly go towards the Varus. We do still have Rumble open. You would expect that to be the go-to for Beishang.
Okay, Rumble being hovered over, and looks like it will be locked in as well, especially with the Udyr off. We know Beishang loves that pick so much, so you take away the Rumble. Now other jungle picks get a little bit smaller here for PZX. I mean, we still have things like the Xin Zhao, which has been ever rising in priority. You know, the Lee Sin could actually be a flex over there as well, but instead, securing the bottom lane.
Yeah, and the thing about PZX is you always got to be cautious when trying to anticipate what he's going to pick. In their first series, he played Lee Sin and Hecarim, so, you know, 2 champions we're not seeing all that much. Lee Sin being winless so far in the jungle role, 0 and 3.
True.
PZX was the only player to play Hecarim ever since all the nerfs and changes. He predominantly builds just straight AD now, so not that same all-in frontline tank he used to be, but all-in bottom lane coming out from the side of Victory 5. We're not going to see Kepler on those stock and standard, you know, more late game oriented carries that we set up for him. Instead, this time wanting to be a facilitator for that top side of the map. And then we're going to have Viego come out for one of the soul lanes on the side of WE. AP in the jungle, bringing out an AD soul laner. You would expect that to go towards Mole, but Viego's still definitely a flex pick, even if we haven't seen him in the top lane just yet in the LPL.
First time seeing it out of WE as well. Just note, we've seen a Gwen, but no Viego so far. So exciting to see this attach itself to WE. I want to point out, Lyric, that there's a pick that's really just gone through that hasn't been touched. We have our Ezreal. Ezreal has not been looked at whatsoever. The Jhin priority for Kepler with the Leona bottom lane. And we know this is one of Elk's favorite. I want to see if V5 ban it away.
I mean, the thing about the Ezreal, right? It seems like WE this time we're a lot more oriented towards going for that strong 2v2 lane. And I think a lot of bottom laners are trying to drift away from picking Ezreal into Varus because he can match you in the range. You know, his laning phase is a lot more potent than yours and just gives you a very easy lane of getting prio through and playing around. The thing I'm most curious about is where WE are going to go with their top lane pick up against the Lee Sin. Feels like Lee Sin in most matchups just has such an easy time of being able to get the Iron Spike Whip, throw out your E, and look for that easy push. But WE instead going to opt into going straight for their support pick, wanting to see where the Lee Sin flex is going for the side of Victory 5 before committing to any soul laner for Breathe.
Which makes Tahm Kench a natural selection, right? I kind of grieve there, Lyric. Thanks for covering for me. We already got the Varus there, so why would I be asking for Ezreal? But at the end of the day, you get the Nautilus instead, so no Tahm Kench here, something that has still been prevalent. And okay, Xin Zhao, it's time for PZX to show us how he can play his early game.
Yeah, gonna go straight towards that one, something you hit on earlier. Just a very good early game skirmishing jungler. One of the only junglers that has a really strong, potent level 2 gank if you just want to go, you know, buff and wrap around either mid or head towards bot. They're also gonna bring out Lulu to buff up PZX in the jungle to be an even more potent frontliner, but still not a ton of scaling damage on the side of Victory 5. Definitely all about brawling in that early game. And now for the side of WE, we're seeing them hover the Zoe. This is Mole's go-to pick. It would be our first time seeing Viego in the top lane, and we're getting it.
Okay, we get the Viego top for Breathe, the man who played Lee Sin to such clean mechanics last time. And now with champion number 5 in their 3rd series, I believe, Lyric, it's Breathe who's going to show us how this champion works up against the Lee Sin matchup.
Yeah, and right, Viego has certain things going for him in this matchup, like you see a lot of times where Viego can just walk at you level 1, walk past the wave, hit you with that Q because the range is so long. When you're both fighting inside the wave, you do have a longer auto attack range in him, so you can look to try to tether that range and play it out. But once Lee Sin has access to all 3 of his abilities, you would feel like if he finds that all in, he should definitely win out in the straight up damage trade. But, you know, with the little shroud that Viego has, there are definitely ways to play around the all-in windows that Lee Sin brings.
I feel like it's going to be fun just watching the interaction itself and how they play around those set windows. Viego up in the top side versus the Lee Sin here. And it's going to be interesting to see how Invincible handles the laning phase of Breathe. I think it's something that I was talking about on cast last time, but when Breathe was going up in that top lane, it was just incredible to watch. The laning itself It was against TT, it was against Suning, but Breathe has been laning really well, finding good deficits against his laners, and more importantly, pretty much just gapping with or without jungle attention.
But I mean, Breathe has always been a self-sufficient laner, though back when he was on OMG, he did get a lot of jungle attention, but sure. I feel like when he came into WE in spring, he had to learn to be able to play more by himself with the fact that WE, even back then, were more of a bottom-side oriented team. Yeah. So I'd say definitely very versatile. You still expect to see them play more towards the top half of the map, though with this change in draft for WE this time around, where they have that Varus instead of the Ezreal, there are definitely more options available with missing finding engages, especially level 6 once the Chains of Corruption come online for the side of Elk. And overall, I think straight up 5v5 just looked really good for the side of WE with the amount of AoE damage coming out, the resets coming in for Viego. And yeah, WE definitely should be set up to succeed if they can get into that position.
I just want to say for V5, feels like a Merc Treads game. Zoe, Trouble Bubble, Chains of Corruption you already talked about as well. You have a Nautilus you're going up against. And on top of that, a lot of slow coming through from the Rumble. Plus Viego, we know the Spectral Maw is going to stun you in place. So let's see how V5 optimize as we go into game number 1 here. Something you mentioned there for V5's composition as well. The Lulu coming through here, adding more support to PZX. So does that mean PZX plays more around the mid lane, or does Uniboy start matching around in these skirmishes, these brawls that you asked to see a V5 in this early game?
I think you can expect to see a little bit of both, right? Because there's 100% going to be windows where you should be able to gank Mole in that mid lane. This isn't a matchup I'm too familiar with. In mid, I would expect that Zoe probably still should be able to get the push at level 1 if you do just want to focus using your paddle stars on the wave. But when it comes to actual trading, Lulu in isolated trades is actually very strong, especially coming out from the damage you get with your passive. So we know Mole going to be playing more of a range game, playing off those paddle stars. If Uniboy walks too far forward around the level 3 mark and he has a bubble, you can try and hit that. But the shield going to be able to come out. So this is actually a very decent matchup for Lulu.
Also the help picks, the glitter lance through the wave, just an extra advantage that Lulu has over the Zoe with positioning through the wave, aiming at the angles here for Mole. But it is Mole Zoe, something exciting to see. We always love seeing it on V5 because it had the ability to 1v9 or 1v5 and carry the games. Now going up against the new V5 mid laner against his old team, we have to see how Mole goes out. Even CS so far as we look towards the top lane pretty quickly. And Lyric, you were mentioning the matchup here. We haven't actually seen the Viego up in the top lane. Going up against Lee Sin, who we know is a really strong top laner, I was wondering if you could give me any more insight there and what we can expect looking up top side.
So he did get control of the wave at level 1, like we talked about, right? Coming in from your Q, coming in from your auto attack range. It's very easy to bully out other champions at level 1. We saw Invincible try to go for the engage, but I feel like Herald Path should really be able to shut that down. But PZX going to look for this gank early with the fact that Bree does have that push.
He might have to use that Herald Path you're talking about to get himself out. Spectral Maw flashes away from the Sonic Wave, but the audacious charge. The path finally reveals itself, but Breathe is already dead. First blood over to PZX.
And just a nice window coming out from PZX. We talked about how Xin Zhao is one of these champions who can opt into these earlier gank timings. Didn't opt into taking his Krugs when he was on the bottom side. Hasn't taken his Gromp just yet. So going to get that gank in top. Can safely now take the top side scuttle. We see Beishang on the opposite side. Did just opt into his full clear, so is going to have a little bit of an advantage. Can probably just look to reset right now and look to get a bit of tempo. But we're going to come into the replay. Breathe having the push since level 1. Nice job by PZX to come around that ward by pathing through the jungle side of mid lane. And then it doesn't really matter what tools he has, right? He's just so far overextended that PZX able to follow that one up with a flash and guarantee that kill.
And we know what happens when Xin Zhao gets the game rolling. Not just V5's composition needing to play through some of these skirmishes and, you know, looking for these brawls, but the fact that Xin Zhao gets the early kill, we have PZX on this Caulfield's Warhammer as well. So I feel like this is exactly what you need if you're V5. While Beishang on the other side of the map wasn't able to find a response, he got Scuttle Crabs and he did get Krugs, but he'll get spotted out here, attempting to get a gank through the side brush.
So Beishang not opting into the recall like I talked about, did see PZX on the map, and I think, you know, with his time towards topside, realized, hey, he didn't take his Krugs, he's a Xin Zhao, he's going to steal those away. So going to come back out onto the map a bit slower, which is going to give PZX a bit of a window if he can find a gank. Right now, pings are coming out on mid lane, so that's where you expect them to look, but ultimately, Mole is playing respectfully. They're not able to do anything. and PZX just trying to get that advantage back that he lost in the fact that Beishang stole his Krugs by taking away these Raptors. Beishang is here, though.
He is.
But Mole has to reset. TP's available, so I actually wonder if DW will opt into it, but nope, they just back off.
Okay, Audacious Charge was used, maybe wasn't seen there by Beishang, but at the very least, after backing away, CS becomes a little bit even. Beishang goes bottom, and PZX goes back to his topside camps. So far the early game, been playing really well around this jungler for V5, and WE falling a little bit behind in gold. However, saying that, it does feel like there is one lane that is a success story, and it's this bottom lane that we expected to poke out, seeing the Varus here, and a pick that's just done so well in the LPL, or well globally, honestly.
And that's the thing, right? As long as Elk and Missing can keep them at arm's length early on, get some of Jin's health down, they're going to feel fine in this matchup. For Kepler and ZYF, it's a lot more about finding those all-in opportunities with the fort shot where you are able to outburst Elk and Missing. Even ZYF bringing a decent amount of burst. Is Breathe going to get ganked once again? But the wave's so close to his turret right now, he is fine. WE so far just focusing on some of the scaling elements within their composition. We talked about how, hey, this is going to be a lot more potent in 5v5s, even though you don't really look at their comp and think of scaling. Looks like they are trying to set up a dive bot, though, and Mole's making his way over.
Beishang not level 6 here for the equalizer. Mole, you mentioned, does have the portal jump available, though. Beishang half an EXP bar off of picking up that equalizer, so maybe the Krug camps gets him closer, but up in the top side, PZX wants to dive again. There's no flash available, but the Heartbreaker is PZX. Too deep, though, and Breathe will get the first kill, not able to reset there off of the passive, so Invincible hits him back.
Yeah, WE, though.
Okay, that's
looks like they might get punished.
Uniboy has the wild growth available, used on ZYF, missing behind enemy lines, and will drop to Kepler. But the auto attack at the end, he thought it was enough. Q comes through, deadly flourish. Oh, thank you. That would have hurt to see him get away. So V5, the play doesn't go unscathed.
No, and we saw, right, that V5's bot lane backed off, so they did lose out on some gold and EXP, but still, Mole was losing waves in mid. Mole has to walk back to the mid lane. In that time, WE still try to force that gank bot because they feel like, hey, we're losing too much on top side with Breathe going down. Uniboy still has his TP available, so he's easily able to follow up on the play. They're able to pick up more kills, and that one was just a little bit of an overforce coming out by the side of WE on the bot lane. Breathe got a 1-for-1 in top, so you're completely fine with that when you are the team not investing any resources into that play. I do think he did lose out on some minions, as we can see how the CS discrepancy is building massively right now, but we're going to go straight into the replay. They go for the dive. Mole doesn't have TP. Sleepy Trouble Bubble does come out. So, actually, Uniboy not able to bring all that much at first. Looks like it wouldn't have even mattered too much. Missing probably would have gone down regardless.
Yeah,
he's just
I
dead.
do think the
Dead Hysterics.
The wild growth was kind of nice, whether Missing would have died anyway. I mean, get the knock up to make sure it's a guarantee, but you're right in the end. Trump Bubble's very close in that situation, and as we come back to live, WE behind 1,000 gold, but that could change considering this Rift Herald. Wave was pushed out mid, full pressure here, and an equalizing top side, so Herald goes down, Breathe walks back to lane, and this might give WE a bit of an advantage to net some positive gain in one of these lanes and stem the bleeding that we know V5 are trying to inflict.
I do think this hasn't gone too poorly with the slight advantage that V5 has. I think the big thing that's going to be scary later on is the fact of how far behind Breathe is getting. But it's like, hey, when we saw the Lulu come out, we talked about how she can outtrade Zoe, so we expected there to be more presence coming out from the mid-jungle role, especially with Xin Zhao being more of an early game ganking jungle who can find a lot of these opportunities. Kepler and ZYF holding off just fine despite their CS differential. You still do bring both utility early on, but if Breathe isn't popping off, you're losing out on a lot of the resets you're going to find later on in those team fights. So you're going to be relying a lot more on Beishang and Elk putting out all that damage. Hopefully you're finding fights, especially in choke points where, you know, a Q from Varus, an equalizer coming out from Beishang, that can just completely turn the tide of the fight in your direction. But hopefully V5 can just keep pushing this advantage further and further before we even get to a point where these big team fights or skirmishes break out.
As PZX has found Mole on rotation back from blue buff, burns his real flash. Always in the right place at the right time at this point, and he's got an Essence Reaver as his first item, so feels like PZX is really making use.
Yeah, really interesting coming out from him. We've seen most Xin Zhao so
Good
far.
interruption.
Oh, big equalizer.
ZYF is just dead before we even start the play. Uniboy's joined in as well. The curtain call was exactly the opposite for WE. And ZYF meets his maker. Equalizer, you said it. It was perfect.
Yeah, like you said, we come onto the screen and ZYF is ever an instant and then instantly gone. So WE at least finding certain things back, but going back to the Xin Zhao build, we've mostly seen tank Xin Zhaos come out here in the LPL. Things like the Frostfire and Taranduan's Gauntlet. Kanavi was the one who did bring out the Essence Reaver, and then he kept going the more standard Bruiser Xin Zhao build, which brings you into Gore Drinker and still gives you a lot of that sustainability and survivability once you are being the one to go into these team fights as the front line.
It's kind of fun seeing these adaptations on a build on a pick that is really growing in priority. Had to pause because Beishang was nearby, but no equalizer. Just remember he has the Rift Herald, so it's important to watch this WE jungler to see where he puts it, Lyric. I guess that's my question to you is, you know, what you would do here with the resource and how you would kind of balance the game out a little bit. And again, I talked about it before, bringing more gold back. He's trying to focus around Mole in the mid lane, but PZX keeps hovering. Okay, well, we're just going to start the fight. I guess PZX is going to go for the engage. Beishang targeted, and V5 find another one. Another good pick here, and another good moment for the Xin Zhao jungle.
Yeah, no equalizer available. Beishang overheating right at that moment too. I don't think expecting all members of V5 to commit to that play. So V5 going to be able to pick up the second dragon. And a little bit curious to what the mind state of Beishang, like the thought process, of Beishang was going into that fight. I'm expecting us to get a replay so we can see how it all panned out once again, but now V5's bot lane going to be able to force in this wave, should be looking for a bit of a reset for themselves right now, come back on the map strong, and here's Kepler sitting up 2-0.
All right, let's have a look again because, yeah, you asked about Beishang.
Yeah, so we see Missing and Beishang trying to fight for Pi on the river. The big thing is Invincible's already moving, so the other members of V5 feel very confident about forcing this fight. They know Breed's not here, so very decisive with the all-in. Missing having the flash out as well. Elk and Mole not really in great positions to deal damage. I think Mole was probably fine, right? You're fine playing over the wall with those terrains, but Elk trying to path around from the bottom lane, not able to help. We are going to see them drop the Herald in bot lane. This is the expected place with the fact that they did already get 2.5 plates. So going to be able to break that one open, going to give them a pressure point on the map. And now gold is completely even.
Shelly in spectator mode just teleports out of nowhere. I mean, she's got her own things going on. We need to leave her alone. But yeah, gold back to even after the Herald play. Good observation there, especially since we're one dragon apiece as well. So feels like a very even game despite the 2-0 Jhin, despite the early aggression from PZX to pick up a 3 out of 4 kill participation. And I'm looking at this through a magnifying glass, seeing that PZX has controlled a lot of this early game. I think it's impressive for a team that we set a really low bar for at the start of the split with the roster changes, and the fact that you talked about PZX has a couple of people who demand pressure, like Kepler is someone who looks for attention, Invincible as well, we know, plays around the same state, and PZX has had really good balance so far.
Yeah, PZX said, you know what? I don't need to pick who to play around. I'm just going to gank both of them. I'm going to give both of my lanes resources. And he's done an exceptional job at it so far. We're going to see the map state change with the fact that the first turret did go down. So WE rotating their bottom lane towards the top side to get some pressure on this turret, start whittling this one down. Breathe going to go to the opposite side of the map. So is potential being punished with that extended lane in the bottom side if, once he starts pushing out the wave, whether it's Invincible looking to freeze or just comboing PZX down towards that bottom lane for some ganks.
But I want to know what happens next, because while everyone's moving up top, while we do see the Herald spawning, I mean, we're getting towards those one items where Shirelia's, Gale Force, a lot of movement ability, sustain here from Invincible with the Gore Drinker. I want to know how V5 set up for the next play, considering that you kind of put is it right to say, a timer on this team, and how they need to skirmish and kerfuffle around the next couple of objectives.
I don't think there's necessarily a timer in terms of that their damage really times out. Like, sure, they aren't a very heavy DPS composition, but WE also isn't all that tanky. The big member on WE who's going to get scarier later on, right, is Viego. Once he does start getting some items, can start finding those resets. But a lot of it's still going to come down to positioning, because if we see Beishang cut out in the same way he was in the last fight, you aren't able to combo an equalizer with Elk's damage, with Paddle Stars coming out. It's not going to matter, but For V5, with the fact that the Shurelya's Lulu coming on the mid lane, all the engage on your composition, I think anytime you see V5, you're pretty much just trying to run them down.
Okay, I like that. That sounds very LPLS. Nice bubble from Mole there. Might actually set up for the pick. Mole's trying to get past Uniboy, but the Lulu has his number while the kick comes through, or rather almost does. But it's the Heartbreaker out from Breathe, Invincible at half health, and it's kind of negated by Uniboy once again.
And that's also what we were talking about with the Lulu, right? He walks in, he tanks the paddle, so I think he did drop the shield on himself. And then you see all the damage coming out with his Q, with his passive and auto. So Mole quickly having to back off. And we do see that in the meantime, V5 were also able to pick up the Herald on the top side of the map. Looks like they're grouping up for a potential mid push right now, but with no other members rotating, they're not going to opt into dropping this one down. I think the top lane turret is also relatively whittled down with how much of an advantage Invincible had. So that could be another place where we do see WE look to make a push. But with Dragon coming up in about 35 seconds, it looks like any plays like that are going to wait.
I think we need to look at items before we see the Dragon as well. We've got a lot of members with 1.5, especially PZX as he pushes out the mid wave. Divine Thunder just picked up for Breathe, which is good to sort of match the Lee Sin in Invincible, who has a pickaxe extra to his name. But team fighting tools like the Shurelya's, like the Gale Force even for Kepler, those are things that I'm looking at as Mole sets up for the Trouble Bubble. Beishang's walking in here, but Mole not going to get the paddle star down, and they're pressuring top side. Means for now, Dragon priority is going to be given over to PZX.
Yeah, so WE looked like they were opting into the gold end of the trade, right? Where it's like, hey, we invest everyone in the top side, we leave Dragon alone, but they actually want to do both. They wanted to try to go for that gank top. They're still pressuring PZX off of Dragon, and somehow WE are the ones who are able to get an advantageous position for the Drake and be able to control river.
Looks like Kepler was waiting for the wave instead and didn't want to move down, was very scared about this fog of war. And control over to WE means exactly this. Look at the vision priority. Control wards throughout their line as they walk through in. Like it's Congo or something. Shurelya's pop, Chains of Corruption on the other end though. The poke over to Uniboy puts him at half health while Wild Growth is used on the support. Breathe gets the first kill on Invincible, and for V5 the poke damage continues on. Mole over the wall, WE very low, but it doesn't matter. The kill goes over, Invincible's dead. And now for WE the Dragon should be theirs. But at the moment, it doesn't look like they're opting into it.
No, and V5 gonna instantly go towards mid and drop that Herald. Health bar is on the side of WE, so this turret should be able to go down with Kepler here in full HP. That was a bit of a weird one, because it looked like V5 had the right angle. They got a multi-man Leona stun coming out. They were all able to run in, but Breathe finding the ultimate, able to pick up the kill. Still, WE might have been the ones to pick up a kill off that play, but V5 getting both objectives with how whittled down WE members got.
It's an Infernal Soul on the Rift this game, so 2 more Dragons to go. Nice pickup for V5, and we'll watch again while WE got burnt out.
Yeah, we see Jhin ult opened immediately following with the Leona ultimate. They all run in. I want to keep my eyes on Breathe. Just all channeling in on Invincible. And I mean, they have enough damage, they have enough burst. Also, the fight on top of an equalizer as well. Still, you look at health bars, everyone less than half HP other than Mole. So that's what opened up for the objective takes coming out from the side of WE.
And now, as I said before, for V5, Dragon was picked up instead. And you got 2 more Dragons to go. But I think more importantly as well, we see V5 now having to play defensive against WE, who is starting to threaten out the vision up towards the Baron side of the map that still hasn't spawned and won't for a minute 20. And V5, every time they move in over vision, the poke from Elk, the poke from Mole, the poke you told me about is starting to get more and more threatening, more and more menacing as well.
Yeah, the thing is, though, they're not in too bad of a position, right? You have a lot of
maybe they are now. PZX nuked down, 25 kill streak, and Breathe looking to close this one up. He doesn't have the Heartbreaker. It was used early, but ZYF the kill on the other side as the depth charge follows Uniboy over the wall. Has to flash in the end. Look at the summoners down on the jungle, on the mid, and the kill going over. WE now move ahead yet again as Kepler, Gale Force almost to get him out of dodge.
I mean, the thing is, when you watch these team fights, it's just so insane because if V5 drop all their damage at once, we see what happened like in that last fight. Members just get instantly deleted. Nice bubble.
Doesn't have ultimate available for PZX. He's moving back in as Invincible comes back in as well. Mole on Zoe. Yeah, PZX walks up to the turret and he's punished for it.
WE finding some nice angles, and it goes back to that their comp is extremely good when they can find these fights or try to set up in the enemy jungle, right? A lot of choke points available. Things like the Varus Q should be hitting the Sleepy Trouble Bubbles, who have easy angles for equalizers to come out. So WE doing a nice job of setting up for picks, saying, hey, we're controlling this area, forcing V5 to walk into them. So it's not just like last fight where V5 can just open with that Shirelia's, all run in on you, Leona goes in, Jhin ultimate opens up, and then Invincible and PZX are able to have a field day.
So let's have a look again, because Invincible was the one who added damage here, but this was just a slow poke battle where, yeah, V5 couldn't run into them.
Yeah, and I mean, he wasn't even bubbled or anything, right? Mole just coming in when Invincible was trying to help clear the way, force the members of WE off, goes in just with a paddle start, able to take him down with the passive auto coming out afterwards.
As the Horizon focus, it was the first item here for Mole, and I don't think I've seen many other Zoes in the league that'll often pick this up. I've seen Mole Zoe many times, and he's been usually opting in for this one, so before he gets the Ludens, before he gets that mythic item, it seems like Mole will continue just picking up this item that builds him from range, and now sitting in a side lane with the comfort of WE up in this topside river, Mole's going to push this in, add a bit more gold, and WE will move up to a 2k gold lead.
Yeah, and the only other player I've seen do it, I think, this split so far is Rookie. And obviously you're opting into more of what we've seen Mole doing, playing over terrain, opting into just the long-range damage coming out with the Horizon focus rather than what could be more DPS in an elongated fight with something like the Luden's Echo. We know Horizon focus also does give more AP. Kepler, though, going to start to engage.
And look at where PZX is. Wind becomes lightning, doesn't connect, has to put the ulti out. Invincible on the back line. Kick available, but he hasn't picked his target. Sonic Wave doesn't connect and missing the only dead man right now as Mole over the wall pokes down ZYF as TP is response. PZX right on top of him. Breed now needs to get the hell out of there with the Harrowed Path, but Equalizer ready to turn it around. There's the Heartbreaker as well. Breed poking them down with his mighty long sword as Kepler's in, ready for the fourth shot. He's used the Gale Force here, but V5, 5 alive, still remains strong, and WE can't get the kills to get the resets for Viego, so it all fizzles out.
Yeah, the Wild Growth a nice tool from preventing the Heartbreaker from being able to, take down targets slow enough to where Viego can just finish them off, get that reset, and start to become a menace. V5 so far being very decisive. Pretty much right once we pan back to mid lane, we see Kepler opening up his ultimate and looking for that skirmish. The thing is, though, a lot of ultimates have gone down on both sides, realistically, with Dragon coming up in about 20 seconds. I feel like the most important thing to look at is the fact that Elk having no flash on the side of WE, he's going to be left extremely vulnerable. And for V5, they do have the flashes of their key carries up. Sure, PZX won't have the easiest time getting in if he wants to, if he would prefer to flash in on the enemy carry, but still, with the speed coming out from Lulu, you would expect he's still fine.
I want to point out as well, in front of the face of this Dragon, which V5 are not going to be getting to, that two items here on big carries is look at Mole. Now with the Luden's Tempest, Luden's Echo, Luden's Love, whatever this item's called these days, brings the two item Zoe into fruition. The damage is massive to poke them down. And we got a Prowler's Claw on Elk, and I love that you bring he has no flash, but I also have to remember that the Prowler's Claw has a pretty big range, so Elk still has some form of a dash to watch out for. And Lyric, these two item poking champions, man, right now against the majority of V5, it's so much to handle, and it's getting worse and worse. Dragon goes down, and V5 now playing defensive as WE pinging towards Barren River and controlling the vision even further.
I mean, the good thing is V5 have stayed very even across the game, right? Came out ahead early on. So far in the mid game, it's pretty much been punch for punch, and we've seen V5 find successful fights, find successful picks. Then it'll be like, okay, resets come out, W get on the map first. They've been controlling vision around River and going into the enemy jungle. That's when they'll find successful fights. So I think we've seen how both team comps are able to find wins, right? If V5 are able to get those snap engages, if none of the poke damage is able to come out, if especially they can start playing around windows where maybe even say, hey, we're fine giving up a side wave. If you can then go mid, force a 5v4 engage, find the kills, it doesn't really matter what happens too much down if Breed's not able to follow up. So Both their TPs will end up coming back up about the same time. But I think V5 are definitely the team more who have those windows to be like, hey, you know, it's fine to give this up if they feel confident in forcing an engage around the mid lane, because they do have all their engage tools available.
They do, and their engage tools are at 2 items now as well. Invincible, PZX, huge engage. I mean, ZYF I think is an important one to note that has a Seeker's Armor Guard lyric with a Fiendish Codex. Now, as in Solar Flare comes down, do I have time? Chains of Corruption misses well, maybe not. ZYF, the AP-ish Leona, is now going to be in a hard place with Breathe coming in from the flank. Here's Mole as well, jumping into the field, but PZX pulls out the ulti while into the engage. Invincible, ZYF, it's a wombo of all sorts here. The wild growth from Uniboy yet again, absolutely gorgeous, as WE have lost their bottom lane completely.
And V5 using that wild growth offensively, right? We see Leona go in, stun comes out, knock up immediately to follow through. Beishang's ultimate completely whiffing. Bubble! Mole? Nope, not gonna be able to get it, but still Uniboy extremely low. I wonder if they can actually do this Baron. Mole can put off a lot of poke. Breathe does have his ultimate available as well.
But PZX doesn't look at the face of the Baron. He hides behind, luckily, 3.5k. Mole poking down. Breathe is there. Beishang engaged on. They turn for V5. They're low, but they want to take down the Rumble with him, who buys time with the goldenness as Breathe is now in the whip of the fight. He resets. He heals as well. Sovereign's domination yet again. Breathe now has himself an audacious charge as Sonic Wave connects, but the trouble bubble from downtown. Molly, Molly, Molly! The wild growth on death though. Is it enough to keep Invincible alive? Sonic Wave resonating strike, and the Dragon's Rage make it close. But WE win out in the end.
And we're seeing why WE have relied on their top half of the map so much coming into this split. I can understand what V5 were going for. I don't think they necessarily even wanted the Baron. It's like, hey, we're either going to get the Baron or 3 of them are going to come into us. We feel content taking this 5v3, but still, you're up against a Zoe who's going to keep chunking you out. You're in a confined area. You have Viego who still has his ultimate available, and this fight also shows us how low the Rumble Equalizer cooldown is. Once again, we didn't really need a reminder for that one, but fight's going to start. They're going to find their way onto ZYF. They're going to be able to keep going. Mole the whole time throwing down Sleepy Trouble Bubbles. V5 having to walk forward. Equalizer was just used like 40 seconds ago. Once again, it's up for this fight. Doesn't do much, but still, ridiculous ability. WE able to follow forward with another incredible bubble coming out from Mole. And, you know, that one just sealed the deal.
Breathe almost died twice in that fight as well. I just want to remind everyone, Sovereign's domination is just, it gives a little bit too much healing back. 8% plus 2.5% per 100 bonus AD. That's the HP he recovers, and in that fight, twice he moves back to a quarter of his health. It was a good fight from Breathe, but, you know, you talked about it. The Equalizer on such a low cooldown. Now we come back to live, and WE with a 4k gold advantage. They have Baron, and they have Mole hitting these trouble bubbles. Lyric, we started the show saying we want to see Mole back in action. 303 is doing exactly that as he gets out thanks to a cleanse he's picked up and manages to resurface away from the Solar Flare. But Mole is still here with 2.5 items strong, and Lyric in sieges, Zoe don't miss.
Yeah, but interestingly, we saw Invincible kind of looking for the flank. In the end, does have to back off because another wave comes in for the side of WE. So V5 are still looking for these opportunities. Come around with a Lee Sin kick from behind, kick one of the carries in your team. PZX still able to go in, but we are missing some ultimates. Leona ultimate not available. We don't have the curtain call on Jhin, so V5 probably in a position where they just have to absorb a little bit more pressure before they can look for anything. And they even realize that, because look at the minimap. They send Kepler towards the top side to pick up a wave. He should have to back right now because you're going to be giving up over a little bit too much for the side of WE. They do have Equalizer, though, even if they just want to force them off these objectives and look to take and back off.
It's broken down. The inhibitor may be saved now that Kepler's here, but look at the HP bar of Uniboy. And our double Zhonya Hourglass support, I mean, only one of them looks like they're willing to engage, and that's missing. I'm going to talk to you about that in a little bit, Lyric. Inhibitor's going to drop on down. Chains of Corruption to slow any follow-up. Uniboy hit there again. They baited around, missing. Misses the dredge line, but the poke coming out. The arrows from Elk apparently don't miss either.
No, and WE doing a great job of outputting all this poke. So oppressive for the side of V5 to walk into. They do have some sustain coming out in their top side of the map. They have shields coming out from Uniboy, but it's not enough to deal with this damage. WE going to be able to back off, take this dragon, you expect them to come back out on the map and start looking for those structures on the top side, walk into Victory 5's topside jungle, get down some vision, keep trying to throw out those sleepy trouble bubbles, maybe hit some Nautilus hooks in the meantime, and find the pick to close out this game.
That's what it feels like at this point. Now, I want to pull back discussion again. 3-item Zoe here. Lyric, is this what we wanted from Mole? Is this what we've been waiting for? Like, we got his signature Zoe game, but we got the best of his signature Zoe game, right?
Oh, definitely. And right, he already had one Zoe game this split so far. It was all right. It wasn't bad. He definitely found damage, but was missing a lot of bubbles and paddle stars in that last series. This one, he's been completely on point, but you know, we need to see Mo perform on more than Zoe and more than against a team like V5, who have promoted so many fresh players. And even this game, right, it has been so up in the air. This was not like a dominant win by WE whatsoever. It does feel like they've mostly been in control of this game ever since, you know, maybe the post 5 to 10 minute mark, but V5 have definitely made them work for it.
I think PZX gets a lot of respect here as well. His early games in Zhao's been great, and you're right. It's the wild growth from Uniboy used aggressively. It hasn't been a stop. It hasn't been one-sided. WE still only ahead by 5,000 gold to show you that V5 have actually played a very decent game number one, and WE have been tested a lot, couple of mistakes here and there, and now closing it out, they have to show us that they're the better team by making it as clean as possible. Poke coming through yet again in these sieges, up to another inhibitor turret, while Breathe carries on in the mid-wave that's about to crash.
Yeah, just trying to sync up these waves, maybe waiting for the next Baron to come up, or hoping someone like V5 overstep, because if V5 don't walk out, I don't think WE feels very confident in looking for something like a turret dive against a team composition like Victory 5 that is so durable. I mean, Wild Growth, Shield coming in, pretty much one tank and two off tanks. The only member you'd be able to focus down is Kepler, and he has both cleanse and flash up, and then the utility coming out from Lulu to rely on. So WE definitely taking this a safer route than just over-forcing for a turret.
Plus the huge amount of engage you talked about. That's Invincible, and now they pull the trigger. Equalizer lands down, force him away, but Soulflare is really good. Locks down missing here. Remember, he has a Zonya's Hourglasses. There's the fourth shot, doesn't do too much damage. WE managed to survive. They do some turret damage on the way out, but V5, again, that engage potential can't be underestimated.
Definitely not. Still, they did get the curtain call out, so they can just wait for this next wave, try and throw out the poke, and be able to hit this turret in meantime. I like that Breathe is also threatening another angle from the side. I wonder if we're going to get a fight here, if WE in the end will just back off with Baron coming up soon.
Oh, Breathe uses a Heartbreaker there. Knew Invincible was going to go for the kick flash to slow this play down, but ZYF is low, and that's going to enable the inhibitor for WE nevertheless, so double inhibitor now down. WE back away. Baron's up in 15 seconds. Infernal Soul in 2 minutes. They have the tools to try and end this one. And for WE, I wonder if they're going to reset before they attempt this, as they have full control of the map.
I mean, that's the thing, right? You have no reason not to reset. You've been on the map for so long. You probably do have a lot of gold in your pockets. Pick up some more items. Get some more control wards in your pocket. Then go towards that Baron. Look for it. Even if you don't get it, if you can find a pick from someone on V5 on their way to the Baron, or you can get that fight that you've been looking for, but you can't overforce under their turrets, I think WE are going to be happy taking that. Then you can just group up topside if they do want to look for the immediate end, but with the fact they're on Soul Point, Missing might be caught out.
Yeah, I mean, V5 went so aggressive,
Missing is caught out.
And Missing's dead. Invincible teleports in. The Baron's going to be started here while Red Buff being taken away. I think it actually went over to Elk in the end, but 5 versus 4. V5 technically had this advantage.
Yeah, V5, I think you're going to have to be incredibly decisive with their engage, right? You can't just let Varus and Zoe poke you out while you are in this confined area. Looks like ZYF very aggressively posturing for this. Equalizer not really going to do too much.
All right, curtain call there. It's going to lay into one person. Breathe once again with the Heartbreaker. Flashes back over to the rest of WE. Mole there to clean it up. But PZX, one more hit, negating the Ignite for now as Uniboy in range of Mole. Flashes away while Invincible takes the damage and stays. The poke from Elk, the speed up from Mole. It's a quick double over to this WE AD while minion waves crash and V5 are just running home.
Yeah, with a 5v3, this should be WE's game to end. Mole even having another flash. Members are going to go
and
down.
Another one. And another one, Lyric. It's a double kill yet again. 5-0-4. Mole showed up in this game. And WE clean it up in the end. It's a 34-minute game. It wasn't a stomp, but it sure was an interesting game number one.
at the very least, I think was definitely the best individual game we've seen out from Mole so far on WE. Beishang as well, I think he did have some equalizers that were a little bit off, but I think a lot of the decisions he was making in the early game were quite good, where, you know, he got ahead and punished PZX for the ganks that he was making, stealing away some of his camps, but ultimately in the end, V5 doing a pretty good job of utilizing the Lulu, Xin Zhao early on, putting a lot of pressure up towards the top side, finding some opportunities bot to make sure their bot lane didn't fall too far behind. They were invading the enemy jungle. But once we got to the point where it's like, okay, turrets are down, lane assignments are different, it's all about grouping up as 5 now and fighting over these neutral objectives, that's where we got to see V5's composition shine. And then some over-aggressive decisions by V5 really seemed like it put the nail in the coffin. I think that first Baron is the one that sticks out to mind, right? Where it's like, hey, you're up against a Zoe, you're up against a Viego, you're already a little bit chunked. You're giving yourself a lot of windows to end up giving out kills. And that's really where V5, I think, started solidifying the game.
Because while the engage was better on V5's side, you know, I talked about in Pick and Ban, I think we both did, where it was just beautiful crowd control that comes through from a composition like this. Everyone has the ability to lock you down, and poking at range with the Zoe, the Rumble equalizer you so rightly mentioned as well. And, you know, Breathe darting in and out of these fights was a lot for V5 to deal with. But, you know, you know me, I'm not too positive on teams. Sometimes I can be a real jerk. But I want to say that V5 this time around, you know, I'm actually kind of impressed, especially with how the early game plays out. I think a lot of teams kind of struggle to coordinate, and a pick like Xin Zhao, you know, seeing Lulu in the mid lane, we've seen it used maybe way too passively in the past. And PZX, even in that final moment where he got the pick onto missing, was still looking for engages and still trying to optimize how V5 could get ahead in this game.
It's also interesting, right? I think everyone knows at this point, pro players and everyone has said it many times of like, you know, you can only take scrim results with a grain of salt, but also there were the rumors before the split, right, of V5 performing incredibly well up against a team like WE. So it's nice to see that it's not just like a flash in the pan of like, hey, V5 comes on stage and then they don't show any signs of life, because in their first series against LNG, they just got absolutely smacked, right? So nice to see them come back better into their second stage game, but WE were the story. The massive damage put out by Mole, and Elka, man, we didn't talk about too much. Didn't have too many flashy moments up until the end, I think, especially that last Baron fight, but the whole time throwing out that poke, doing so much. And there were a lot of times, right, where it was chained up to where a Paddle Star and a Q from Varus hit at the same time, and that's when we were starting to see members like Uniboy fall to 30% HP, was that poke combination coming out. And it hits to a point that we made at the start of the day that Elk has definitely been showing those signs of 2020, where a lot of us became big fans of him. I think, you know, Munchable's definitely the most outspoken of like, hey, this guy can be it. This guy can be something special. And this split so far, he's definitely been showing those same glimpses.
Yeah, he definitely has. I mean, that's because Munchable's a bit biased against WE, but I agree. I think I was also on that train where Jolmung rapidly improved.
You gotta throw some shade, Hysterics?
Yeah, of course. He's not on broadcast. I'll say it. I don't care. I know you'll be supporting WE anyway, you know, despite that first game being a bit of a slow starter. But I want to say one thing about Elk is that, you know, you're right. When you talk about the poke coming through, it wasn't just people like Uniboy in that game. It was also top lane Lee Sin. I mean, Invincible, who was a bruiser, was getting chunked to half HP, even, you know, 1/3 of his HP with one of those combos of pokes. So they were on point. I think Elk and Mole didn't really miss. But Lyric, we're going to go to a break. You don't have to say anything about that. I know you agree with me all the time, 24/7. So we're going to go to a break, ladies and gentlemen. When we return, Game 2 to see what V5 can show us.